Okay, welcome everyone. Thank you so much for coming to our third in the water conservation series, our third program. And my name is Meadow Fitton, and I coordinate the Water Talks program for California Drought. And just briefly, I'd like to cover a couple logistics, which are the restrooms are at the entrance of the museum as you're coming in, so if you need to use those. And then for you to take a moment and find your cell phone or other noise-making device and turn it to quiet. Thank you. And just could I get a show of hands of who attended parts 1 and 2? Oh my goodness, look at that. Wow, thank you so much for coming to the whole series. And is there anyone in the audience who, this is your first time coming to a Water Talks? Oh, and we have 4 new people, so this is wonderful. Thank you, welcome. What we're going to do tonight is our brief introduction. We'll be seeing the city's water supply video and have our presentations, and then have our unique water policy conversation. So without further ado, what are these Water Talks? Since many of you have been here before, it's an ongoing series of educational presentations on water-related topics. And tonight is the completion of our 2015 series and our 31st program. And we've had over 1,500 people attend, and these are some of the friendly faces. Over 90 people from our local and regional communities have volunteered their time to present at these Water Talks programs. Many of them also repeat attendees. Tonight, Jeff and Elizabeth have also presented to us before. And the purpose of this program is simply to provide a place to learn about water-related topics with the goal of having a more informed participation in water policy by providing a place for community members to interact with our local experts. Tonight we're going to change things up just a little bit, and we're going to take a short Q&A period after each presenter, as well as we've built into tonight 40 minutes of time to have a facilitated community conversation regarding drought policy. So this is the third in our series, and the main question that we've been focusing on for these past 3 topics is how can Mount Shasta area residents conserve water and be prepared for an extended drought? And these programs were funded by the Prop 84 Integrated Regional Water Management Grant from the Upper Sacramento Integrated Regional Water Management Plan and Group through Department of Water Resources. So tonight what we're hoping is that you'll become familiar with Mount Shasta City's water supply infrastructure and be updated on the city's springs production, to become familiar with the city's emergency water reduction policy and the process that the city will be taking moving forward, for you to be able to provide meaningful input into the city's policy process, to know what changes you can expect with the installation of water meters in the city of Mount Shasta, and know how to read your water meter for the basic information and usage, and then to also know the city's plan for a rate study and when you could expect detailed bills. So tonight's program will watch the video to remind us about the city's water infrastructure, and then we will have a update on the 2 DWR-funded infrastructure projects from Curtis Paget with Pace Engineering. Then we have a gentleman, Dave Todd, with the Department of Water Resources, who drove all the way up today, and he's going to have to drive all the way back tonight to give us a presentation on the state's drought policy and how that's connected to our rural communities. And then tonight, Jeff Harkness, not with Rod Ryan, will be talking about the city's water reduction policy and the successes of that this year. And finally, we'll have our facilitated community conversation with Elizabeth. And now, without further ado, we shall be reminded of this incredibly unique water system in the city of Mount Shasta.
The city of Mount Shasta's water supply is dependent on natural precipitation that falls on Mount Shasta. The infrastructure consists of cold springs, 4 storage tanks, a water supply line, 2 wells, distribution pipes, and the SCADA system. Cold Springs is the principal source of water for the city. The spring emerges at 4,167 feet and is located at the top of McLeod Avenue. The spring water fills 4 tanks with a combined storage capacity of 1.7 million gallons and is gravity fed. The water in Mount Shasta is untreated and comes out of your tap at a crisp 41 degrees. During low spring yield periods, the city's maximum daily demand exceeds the city's source capacity.
We're at Cold Springs, which is the primary water source for the city of Mount Shasta. The common belief is that the water we drink is an old and unlimited supply. This particular springs is relatively young. The water's age is anywhere from 0 to 1.6 years old. As a result, it's very influenced by weather patterns, and particularly drought. And we noticed this most recently last summer when production of the springs dropped to historical lows. As temperatures rise due to climate change, we anticipate receiving less snowpack in the spring's recharge area. On average, the spring produces about 2,000 gallons per minute. That amount of water usually meets the city's demand, at least for most part of the year. During the critical summer months, the city does supplement the springs production with water from wells that are down in town.
We're at the Mount Shasta Quail Hill water storage tanks. There are 3 tanks at this site, comprising about 1.2 million gallons of storage. Water from this site is served by Cold Springs, which is located about 1.5 miles upstream of here. And water at this site, it comes together in a series of pipelines and serves the city of Mount Shasta, which is comprised of about 35 miles of 1 through 12-inch pipelines. Within that system, there are 4 pressure zones that serve various areas as you go down in elevation. And within the pressure zones, there are 2 wells that serve the city when supply from the spring is not enough to keep up with demand. Our proposed project here is to replace the existing pipeline that currently serves this site. Be about 9,000 feet of new pipeline that we're proposing to put in McLeod Avenue.
We're here at Well 1. It's located at Washington and Lake Street. Well 1 is our primary well. It has a capacity of about 850 to 900 gallons per minute. Well 1 and Well 2 are typically used in the summertime to supplement the spring production. Last year was different. In the summer of 2014, spring production was as low as it's been in the last 20 years. We found that we had to run these 2 wells 12 to 18 hours per day to keep up with the demand. Peak demand times are around 3 to 8 a.m. when irrigation systems are coming on and people are getting ready for work, and then again in the evenings as people return from work. It was during these peak times that our Quail Hill tanks were reaching unusually low levels, and even with the wells running all day, it was taking a long time for the tanks to recover. In Mount Shasta, our average daily usage reached around 900 gallons per person per day. I think it's important to remember that we do have a fairly reliable water source, but it is not unlimited.
With climate change and potentially increasing temperatures, we do expect that it's going to become more and more important to both monitor and possibly conserve our water use going forward.
Okay, thank you for watching the video to learn more about the city's water supply infrastructure. I think there'll be some really nice updates to that video with changes in patterns and conservation this year, which are pretty substantial and amazing, really, from Jeff when he gets up here. And now I'm going to introduce Curtis Paget, and he'll give us an update on these projects. And Curtis is a staff engineer at Pace Engineering. He's a Northern California native, born and raised in Redding, California, and a graduate of Foothill High School in Palo Cedro, California. He received a Bachelor of Science degree in Civil Engineering from University of California, Davis, and is currently working on a Master of Science degree in Civil Engineering with an environmental focus from Ohio University. He was an integral member of the design team for the water meter installation project and inspected the construction of both the water meter installation and supply line replacement projects. So thank you, Curtis, for coming up here to give us the status update on these projects.
Hello, like they said, I'm Curtis Paget. I'm a staff engineer with Pace Engineering, and I'm here to provide a status update on the water system improvement projects we did over the summer. So we did the supply line replacement project, and a little background information on the project is we replaced the existing, it's 90-year-old riveted steel water supply line that runs cross country from Cold Springs to the Quail Hill tanks. It was beyond its serviceable life and really needed to be changed. So we replaced that with a 12-inch supply line that's located in McLeod Avenue. Moving it into McLeod Avenue versus cross country makes it more accessible for maintenance and repairs, and the city staff can relatively get to at ease. We also did upgrades to the tank sites for more efficient use of water. When the system filled up, it would overflow at the tanks, but we redid the plumbing and installed an altitude valve which prevents the system from taking more water than it needs. So it's more efficient use. So here's a picture or diagram of the project. At the top is that 12-inch Cold Springs supply line that we installed in McLeod Avenue. We also installed a 12-inch magnetic flow meter to measure the water that's coming into the system, so we know what's coming in. We have a pressure reducing station on McLeod Avenue, which reduces the pressure coming into town to protect the city system from being overpressurized. And we also have the altitude valve at the Quail Hill tanks and the 12-inch parallel water line from Quail Hill Drive to the tanks. So the status of the project is we've installed 8,400 feet of 12-inch water main in McLeod Avenue. That's installed, tested, operating. It's now supplying the city's water supply. The PRV station on McLeod Avenue is installed. It's working, functioning as designed. The altitude valve at Quail Hill is operational. It's keeping the tank levels from overflowing, which is great, efficient use of water. All that's left is we still have to install that 900 feet of pipe from Quail Hill Drive to the Quail Hill tanks, which we hope will finish by the end of the year. We're a little behind schedule, but we're on budget, which is great. We were shooting to be done by November, but it looks like probably December we'll finish up. So here's some pictures from the project. There's some massive boulders in Mount Shasta, and we knew we might hit them, and we actually did. This was one of the larger ones we found under McLeod Avenue. It's almost, it could fit in my office, it'd fill up my office. But yeah, that was a massive one, but we found a few of those, surprisingly. So this is the 12-inch water main that they're actually laying in the ground. So that's 12-inch PVC. It'll be there for 70 plus years. They believe probably 100 plus. So it's a really great pipe and will be a really reliable source of water for the city. This is the crew backfilling, compacting the trench, make sure there's no settlement, which can cause problems down the road. This is the plumbing that's underground. These are the gate valves right around the PRV station. So this is what it looks like underground where the valves are. So this is them installing them on the upstream side. And then this is a view of the PRV and pressure relief valve on McLeod Avenue. This is all backfilled, everything, but it's an interesting design. But it protects the city from being overpressurized, which is important to have that fail-safe. On the water meter project, a little background, California law requires cities or customers to be charged based on consumption by 2025. So the city took a very proactive approach in securing funding and installing earlier than that deadline, which gives the city greater flexibility to do a rate study and things of that nature. By metering, it allows the city to better manage its water, to know what water is coming in and what's going out, which is very important for finding leaks, making sure all water is accounted for. It also provides a more equitable distribution of charges, so you pay what you use and nothing more. The status of the project is we installed 1,824 meters in the city over the summer. We're pretty much done installation. We fixed numerous leaks. The largest leak we found was 181,000 gallons a week we found in one of them. I think the second highest was 80,000 gallons, and the third was 25,000. So there's some massive leaks we found, and we got them fixed, which is great because now we're not wasting as much water. We came in under budget and ahead of schedule, and you can't beat that. Now we're just in the cleanup phase, so the contractor's just going back and making sure that whatever they touched is how they found it or better. And if you have any issues, if you think they need to clean something up, let Rod Bryan know at the City of Mount Shasta, and he'll make sure the contractor gets out there and fixes whatever he needs to fix. So here's some pictures from the project. This is the 6-inch water meter at, I believe this is at the Treehouse, Best Western. So this is one of the larger meters we installed. I think the largest is an 8-inch at the hospital, but this was quite the undertaking to install this. This is a 2-inch meter that we installed in downtown Mount Shasta. And these are what you'll be most familiar with. These are the iPearls. This is the bulk of the meters we installed. So if you live in City of Mount Shasta and you're on city water, this is your meter. So this is multi-service to single parcel. And here's a single one with risers for easy access to read and shut off. So these were the leaks I was talking about. So those are the pinhole leaks that you can find in service lines. Pipe's really old, really worn, and breaks easily. So this isn't the 181,000 gallon leak, but this is one of the many. Here's another one that we found. But yeah, just little pinhole leaks here and there. So this is the crew installing the boxes, making sure everything's level. Compacting nice around so you don't get that settlement underneath it down the road, which is very important. And here's them pouring the concrete. So that's where we're at with both projects. If you have any questions, feel free to ask. Yes.
Should I go now?
Yeah, so we have just a really short, quick question answer after each one and then keep moving on. Yeah, that seems like a good idea. And Elizabeth will put the mic by you so that everybody can hear. And I'll get my watch to make sure we don't go over it.
My first question is, you showed a new meter up at the spring, and
Yes.
then you did have a bunch of graphs of historical spring flows, I guess. So,
Yeah.
or was that consumption? I'm not sure what the graphs were showing. So,
Oh, the graphs during the video?
maybe so. Maybe that was.
Yeah, well, there is an existing meter coming for inflow for the city system, but that's on the old supply line. So we made sure to install a new one on the new line to make sure that we know what's coming into the system.
I was just wondering where you found those leaks, and if those leaks hadn't been in existence, would we have had the severe use of water last summer that is described in the video?
I don't know specific locations of all the leaks. I know there was leaks all around the town, especially in the older parts of town. I believe I might have more specific addresses somewhere, but not with me, unfortunately. Definitely finding those leaks and fixing them now versus back then. I mean, it's hard to say. It's good that we fix them now and we can conserve water now, and the city can now know better how their system is using water, I guess, and moving forward now. We can make those fixes.
So I may be able to answer that question too. So the spring produces about 2,000 gallons per minute. The leak that Curtis talked about, the 181,000 gallons per week, that would equate to about 12 gallons per minute. Is that right?
Yeah.
Okay, so
Yeah.
that puts it into a little bit of perspective. This total spring production,
Versus 2,000?
total spring production is about 2,000. At times, total consumption within the city is about 3,000 gallons per minute. And so these leaks were anywhere from 5 to 12 gallons per minute. So cumulative, they have an impact, but it's not the total story.
Thanks, that's good math.
Yeah. Thanks, Jeff.
What is the percentage of the total loss compared to the total consumption compared to the total amount coming in?
Oh, so what's going in versus coming out?
Yeah, what exactly, tell us, what percentage did you save with all the leaks that were plugged?
And I can address that in my, well, I can address part of that question in my presentation. Francis.
Oh, okay, very good.
In our cold weather, do we have to be concerned with any kind of freezing within our water meters?
My understanding of the meter is you don't have that freeze issue. I know a lot of the meters around town were insulated, but as long as water's flowing, they shouldn't freeze. It wouldn't hurt to put insulation in your box though. It wouldn't hurt. Yeah.
Are the meters electronic,
Yes.
so they're not read manually?
You can read them manually. Jeff might be able to talk about that more. It's up to the city how they read it in their rate study and their policies moving forward. So
Quick
it's
answer
a city policy.
is the vast majority will be automated reads, but you do have the ability to have it manually read. You know, I can talk about that in more detail.
Last one.
I don't have a question, I just have a comment. I don't know if you had anything to do with it, but White Hawk Engineering is one of the finest organizations that I've ever had the pleasure of working with. And I just wanted to congratulate you for all the hard work and the improvement projects that you did.
Thank you. Thank you.
Actually, I need to, your notes. If I can, use it to introduce you. All right, thank you, Curtis. And now I'll introduce Dave Todd. He has been, is this on? Yeah, okay. He's been a land and water use program manager with the California Department of Water Resources Water Use Efficiency Branch since 2001. He supervised the City of Fresno Water Conservation Program from 1981 to 2001 and was Public Information Officer for the city in 1988. Dave lectured in political science and public administration at California State University, Fresno from 1984 to 1996. He's a native of Fresno, California. He served in the U.S. Army and was stationed in San Pedro, California and Augsburg, Germany. He received an AA degree from Fresno Community College and a BA in Public Administration and MA in Political Science from California State University, Fresno. He produced the Nitty Gritty Down and Dirty Landscape and Garden Club featuring Eddie Albert, Richard Keel, and Joan Embry for public television in 1989. He developed Project Waterworks, an educational software for the American Water Works Association in 1986. 2 nonfiction stories about his Trans-Sierra ski trips were published in Inspiring Generations, 150 stories about Yosemite published in 2013. Dave Todd is past president, board of directors of the Comprehensive Alcohol Program, a former volunteer in the park and member of Nordic Ski Patrol, Yosemite National Park. He is a member of the Yosemite Winter Cross Country Ski Club, past chair, Water Conservation Committee, California-Nevada Section, American Water Works Association, past regional vice chair, Conservation Management Committee,
American Waterworks Association, past president, Public Management Assistants of Central California, board member emeritus, California. You know, I don't know how to pronounce, is it Xeriscape? Xeriscape Foundation. So he really knows about how to landscape without using a lot of water. And currently, he is the Land and Water Use Program Manager for Department of Water Resources, traveling all over the state to help teach us about the drought in California. So thank you.
There we go. Well, thank you very much for inviting me up here, because I really love the amazing view of Mount Shasta. And I almost took my skis, but I thought, nah, probably too high to climb. I'm going to put this in my pocket. Yeah, okay, thank you. And I'm going to apologize in advance for skipping through some of these slides quickly because we have a limited time, but this way it'll be available on the website and you'll be able to get more information if you want it. So I'm going to give you a brief overview of the drought in California and talk about some programs that we have that you could take advantage of. So I'm sure you all saw this picture in April 1st of this year, and the governor declared, issued an executive order declaring drought measures, snowpack changes from 2013 to 2015, from full to dry, and that meant I could not ski to Glacier Point this year. So it hits home. Oops. So it's the driest year in 119 years, actually, or driest period, but 2015 is the driest year in over 1,200 years. So we have January 2015, the driest year in most years. It's also been a warmer year than ever. Record low snowpack, not quite zero. Was about 3% on April 1st. Statewide storage is extremely low. Local conditions are degrading, but on the positive side, there's a high level of local, state, and federal coordination. So that was the runoff on May 1st. 3%. State drought conditions exceptional drought extends over most of the state. The estimated population impacted by it is 36 million, so it's a good part of the state. So how do we deal with that? Well, the state has put together the California Water Action Plan, has 10 actions they identify towards a path towards reliability, restoration, and resilience. And number one on the list is to make conservation a way of life, improve efficiency, provide funding, increase water and energy and greenhouse gas emission reductions, and promote local conservation, and then to manage and prepare for dry periods. So quite a bit of money is available. The state is actually providing emergency drinking water to over 4,000 homes in around various parts of the state, particularly in the central San Joaquin Valley, East Porterville. I'm working on a project with the Department of Emergency Services to help folks because I don't know if you can't really see in the picture, but those are school children trying to go to school. They haven't been able to take showers, wash their clothes, and there's public showers and public portable facilities. That's the situation, and that's in a number of areas. So there's a number of State Water Resources Control Board has issued a number of regulations that are prohibitions for all of California, and I'm not going to read through these. I'm just going to say that they exist. And they have emergency conservation regulations for small community water systems, requiring them to conserve 25% or reduce outdoor watering to 2 days a week. more drought actions we have public information campaign through saveourwater.gov. You can check it out on the web, and conservation water pricing. And here's where this headset really comes in handy, because you know what it reminds me of is the Home Shopping Network, right? And do I have a deal for you tonight? Sure. If you, I don't know if you noticed when you came in, but I left some flyers up there, and one of them talks about the turf rebates that program that we have in effect, and it's $2 per square foot for up to 2,000 square feet to replace your turf and replace it with, more drought tolerant landscaping. And in addition to that, we have a $100 rebate for purchase of a high efficiency toilet. And what that means is one that uses 1.28 gallons per flush or less. But you have to be replacing one that uses 3.5 gallons or more. And that's one toilet per household. So if you act now, before we close tonight, no, you actually have a little bit more time than that. So, moving on from that, there's quite a bit of funding available for various grants, and I understand that you received some grants. So I'll skip through these, but I'd like to focus a little bit on urban water management plans. Now, your supplier here is not required to complete a urban water management plan, because that applies to those with more than 3,000 connections. But planning is a good idea, and I see that you have been doing planning. One of the components of an urban water management plan is a water shortage contingency plan. And we have online and listed here are what the steps are to develop a water shortage contingency plan. We also have technical assistance available, and I should mention that too, for technical assistance to develop water shortage contingency plans, and also technical assistance for leak detection. And we have a contractor who actually does leak detection surveys. You're already ahead of the curve on that, but if down the road you need that, it is available. And in addition, online we have the Urban Drought Guidebook. It's going to be up, well, we said it was going to be updated in 2015, but this drought happened and we kind of got distracted. So it will be updated though eventually. It's water supplier focused, instructions for preparing the drought water supply contingency plans, and with plenty of examples on how other suppliers have responded to droughts. So what are the big ticket items in terms of water conservation? Well, reducing landscape water use is number one in most areas. Give better pricing signals, provide better information to customers, and reduce leaks. And you're obviously on track to do that here. So an average California home loses 31 gallons of water per day to leaks. And the most common leak are toilet flappers, then faucets, irrigation systems, and then pipes. How many of you in here have automatic irrigation systems? Okay. How many of you in here have ever gone out and turned on the system to see how it operates? Whether there's any broken sprinkler heads, or maybe, they're spraying into the street? Yeah, okay. All right. You don't count because you know all about this stuff, but no, that's great. That's really great. That's what we need to do periodically, and I mean, I do it from time to time too. So it's a kind of a question of awareness of our water, because, most people in California, if you ask them where the water comes from, it comes from the tap, when you turn it on. But as we've seen in the video, that's not quite the whole story. So in addition to what's going on here is gray water standards were relaxed in 2010, which means that if it's a clothes washer system that doesn't require cutting existing plumbing system, it's now exempt from a construction permit process, so you can use gray water. usually for the landscape. What some other communities have done around the state are to have demand offset programs, and what that means is any new development project has to project how much water they would use, and then they have to retrofit existing customers to offset the demand that they would create. So typically they do it by, distributing shower heads or toilets or whatever might work. Some have adopted water meter moratoriums, and that means that, if you buy a home in, let's say, Cambria, California, where they have this, you're not going to be able to get water unless you can talk somebody else into giving up their water meter. And maybe they want to move or whatever, but that's how tight the water supply situation is in some parts of California. In other communities, they're using recycled water, beneficially treated municipal wastewater, and there's a new subdivision in San Diego which has recycling built into it. So every home will be plumbed for the use of gray water, recycled water from the beginning, which is the most cost-effective way to do it. Another approach, okay, thank you, is desalination. The impacts then, and that's obviously not an option here, but not only on the ocean, but also inland where there's brackish groundwater. Desalination is a water supply that's can't be affected by drought, and desalinating saline water mitigates the effects of drought by producing fresh waters. Let's see here. Okay, so Department of Water Resources, which is who I work for, is doing a variety of things to respond to the drought. We've included updating we have a DWR drought page with lots of links and tools that you can use. Proposition 50 focused on desalination primarily. Prop 1, which is our sponsor tonight because that's who providing the money for the turf and toilet rebates I mentioned. I should also mention that we're doing a direct install program for both the turf replacement. That's mainly going into institutional customers like schools and government offices, that kind of thing. The toilet direct install program is going to disadvantaged communities and communities that are in high or medium impacted groundwater basins. So like those 4,000 homes I mentioned earlier, that's where some of those toilets will go. And our target is to issue 52,000 rebates for toilets and hopefully install about 16,000 high efficiency toilets in the disadvantaged communities. So the money for that is coming for Prop 1, and I'm just going to skip through all of the criteria, but you can look it up on the website if you're really interested in reading fine print. So what happens if next year is dry? Can that happen? It could. Even with Godzilla El Nino breathing down our neck, most of the rainfall could come in Southern California. And if it rains up here, it might be warm rain. We don't know. I mean, I don't know. But, when I think about it, I always remember what a physicist named Richard Feynman said. And he was an individual who worked on the Manhattan Project, and he's the one who discovered why the Space Shuttle Challenger blew up. He figured it out. And what he said is nature bats last, which means that we have to plan as though it will be a dry year and as though the drought will continue. And we know that even if it's wet, California climate is extremely variable, and it's getting more so because of climate change. So what do we do if it's dry next year? Well, there will be minimal project deliveries from the State Water Project and the U.S. Bureau of Reclamation projects. There will be temporary salinity barriers in the Sacramento River. Surface water curtailments to those who get their supply from surface waters. Increased conservation, the state will issue stronger restrictions. There will be increased mutual aid and assistance. restricted groundwater use to reduce impact to critical facilities, because you may know that there's a lot of overdraft in the state, and which is causing subsidence, which causes foundations to crack, water pipes to break, and other infrastructure problems. And in some cases, that capacity, the groundwater capacity, is lost forever, you know, when it's pumped out like that. Not everywhere, but in some locations. And the other thing we can all do is to reuse, recycle, and reclaim. So we need to keep saving. I want to thank you all for fixing leaky faucets. And I'd like to leave you with this thought: make water conservation a way of life, please. Thank you. I guess we'll take a few questions.
Yeah, so we'll have a few questions after you.
Yes.
Hi, I don't think I need a mic, I can talk out.
All right.
Yeah, I'm interested, I actually did a lot of research in Australia on urban water management during the drought in
Yeah.
Sydney. It was my PhD topic, and one alternative that came up there was rainwater tanks.
Yes.
It's a very common thing in Australia to have
Right.
a tank that catches the water that rains, that falls, and also stormwater harvesting, because it's a similar situation there, that the place where they store their water is not where the water's falling, it falls on the coast. So similar here that, you know, Southern
Right.
California, the water just washes right down at the sea. I grew up in Santa Barbara, so we saw a lot of that in the El Nino. So is anything being done here in
Yes, it
California
is.
for
Yes.
stormwater harvesting or rainwater tanks?
Yeah, primarily on the local level, but in Los Angeles, the LA Tree people have a project funded by the city of Los Angeles, and they may be getting money from some other sources too, where they built large cisterns in the street and permeable paving and so on to capture stormwater. And that's an excellent approach. And it's been going on for, I believe, about 10 years. Also, a number of places have rebates or for rain barrels, and you can, you know, it requires some rain gutter modification to use it, but that's a great approach.
So those are legal here if people want to build a house with a rain barrel?
Yes.
Okay. It's good to know. I don't think it was last time. I was away for a long time.
Oh, as far as I know, it's legal.
Yeah.
In some states, it's not though.
Yeah, some states it's not, but in California.
Right, yeah. Yes.
I think Sacramento is still partly non-metered, and
That's
I don't know
correct.
if other cities are partly still
I'm
non-metered.
hanging my head.
Why hasn't Brown mandated rapid, 1 year finish? If Mount Shasta can put in, that many meters in one summer, why can't these big cities get metered?
You know, I am so embarrassed because you're right. You know, in 2004, I guess it was, the legislature passed a law and the governor signed it to require, as was mentioned earlier, all water meters in all cities by 2025. Sacramento is metering. I believe they're about 60% of the way through their project. I've had a meter longer than that because I had a second residential unit on my home, and you know, that's what needs to happen, and accelerating that requirement would certainly, have a major positive impact. Pardon me?
What's the reasoning for not accelerating the water meter installation?
Well, I can't answer that, but I can say that it would be a good thing to do, and budget is probably part of the problem because cities have to come up with the money to do it. But you got a grant for the metering program, so they may be able to do that as well. When I worked for the city of Fresno, it was totally unmetered residential customers. And then they had a pilot project. For 2 years I had a meter, and then they repealed the metering requirement. So, but as of January 2013, the city of Fresno was totally metered. So Sacramento, shame. Yes. Oh, sorry. Yes.
Are there any plans to do any financial aid for rainwater retrofitting?
I can't say specifically, but I think you know, there are grant programs, and, you know, you could put together a grant application maybe in conjunction with a utility or a school or, you know, something like that. Some suppliers have some rebates available. Yes.
I think I was back here.
All right, go ahead.
Oh, sorry, I'm going around. I'll go ahead.
I have sort of a two-part question. The first
Sure.
is like all of your conservation measures up there were directed at urban.
Yes.
And so my question is, of the statewide California water resources pie, if you will, stored water, not groundwater, surface water, dams, reservoirs, how much of it is allocated for agriculture and industry, and how much of it is allocated for urban?
Oh, yeah. I do have a slide, but in percentages, you know, we talk about of the developed water, 86% or so goes to agriculture, and you can see 33 million acre feet to agriculture, almost 9 million to urban, just leaving out water that goes to the environment for environmental purposes.
So what sort of conservation measures is the state imposing on agriculture and industrial users?
Well, the ag users many of them had their water supply curtailed. That's a surface water curtailment, yeah. And so, you know, that's pretty drastic. Many of the farms have gone to drip irrigation and pressurized systems. Not all of them, but some of them. And the amount of irrigation from furrow irrigation has declined substantially over the last 10, 15 years. But, you know, there's always opportunity for more. And then in terms of industrial customers, that's primarily local restrictions because there are so many different types of industrial users that you almost have to take it on a case-by-case basis to determine how most effectively to reduce their process water use.
So actually, we're gonna
Got to go, move on?
We'll move on to our next presentation, so we make sure we get to our
Sure.
community
All right.
conversation time. But thank you. We're gonna, I really will welcome your question when we get to, well, if it's.
We will have a lot of time for public input.
Yeah, we've got a 40-minute part in our presentations today to be able to have our community conversation. So thank you, Dave. And let me introduce Jeff Harkness, who is the mayor for the city of Mount Shasta. And he was elected to city council in 2012 and appointed to the Community Economic Development Activities Committee and the Library Advisory Committee. He also represents the city on the Upper Sacramento Regional Water Management Group, an affiliation of 3 municipalities, 9 nonprofits, and 4 tribes charged with addressing critical water issues within the Upper Sacramento watershed. And I'm just going to insert that he was very instrumental in this first grant through the IRWM, which resulted in these infrastructure projects. Professionally, Mr. Harkness is an investment advisor and partner with Pacific Private Wealth Services here in Siskiyou County. In this role, Mr. Harkness assists individuals with investment and wealth management. Within the community of Mount Shasta, he is a member of the Mount Shasta Rotary, Siskiyou Young Professionals, and Mount Shasta Youth Soccer. Mr. Harkness spends leisure time with his family floating rivers, skiing our local mountains when there's snow, and biking Siskiyou County's roads and trails. Thank you, Jeff, for providing us our update on the city's water reduction policy.
Well, as I fiddle with this, let me just say thank you. It's great to be here. And thank you for making time to join us all this evening. And really, I have a great story to share with you tonight. Sure, that'd be great. And I don't even know if I need it.
You do.
Okay.
It's recording the audio. So it goes
Like that? All right, I'll give it a shot.
it's very funny, but
Kind of like that? Good? All right. I'm here to share a great story with you tonight. It's a story that occurred here in Mount Shasta, and it's a story about the California drought and our residents' conscious efforts to do their part related to that drought. And I'm going to use this PowerPoint presentation to walk us through that story, well, to set the stage, if you will. And I'm going to use not only the PowerPoint presentation, but also some of the graphs incorporated in it. And I'm going to start setting that stage just by talking about our water supply, the source of our water supply. I'm going to talk a little bit about those programs and initiatives that we implemented in 2014 and 2015. And then I'm really going to get to the heart of the story and talk about the impact that we had here in Mount Shasta on our water utilization. And then I'll wrap up and summarize toward the end. So with that, let me just start setting that stage and talk about our water supply, which, as Curtis mentioned, is Cold Springs. And Cold Springs produces about 1,400 to 3,000 gallons per minute. And this graph here actually shows the production over the last 20 years by month. And what is interesting, well, there's a couple takeaways in this slide. The first is that you'll notice that each line represents a different year, and there's a seasonal fluctuation. So there's a kind of a baseline value here, and then most years as we get into summer, production actually increases. And at times it has spiked and peaked around 3,500 gallons per minute. And that seasonal fluctuation is actually a result or due to the fact that this is a relatively young spring. I mean, when I say young, I mean the time it takes from when the precipitation hits the ground to when it actually percolates out of the spring is anywhere from about 4 to 6 months. That's our best guess. So on really wet years, we'll get a big rainstorm, a big snowstorm in December, and that will actually start trickling out in June and July. And so the big wet years is when we have the biggest, largest spikes. In 2014, though, that was a 20-year low, at least. And we never really got those big rains, those big snowstorms throughout the entire year. We never got the bump. And this is really the second takeaway, that 2014 was one of the lowest production years for our spring in 20 years. And an interesting thing here is that, there's actually, let me see. Oh, there it was. There it is. So this slide actually updates, and we actually see 2015 is now in red. And this is our spring production. And we actually started out lower than in 2014. But then, if you recall, October 2014, we had a pretty big rainstorm. December 2014, we had another torrential rainstorm. February, flooding. And then we've had a slow, steady rains through our spring and really into some of our summer. And as a result, we did get our little bump in the spring production this year, which was good to see. So this helps. Let's see, I'm going the wrong way. Here we go. So in terms of how this relates to our demand, so Mount Shasta has pretty high demand in that in years past we've consumed nearly 1,000 gallons per day per person. And in this graph down at the bottom, you may have seen this before. This is actually a 4-day period in 2014, spanning from July 24th to July 27th. And this actually shows us our water usage during this time period. And so what we have is, this is the middle of the night, during the day, or sprinklers come on, people start taking showers, our water consumption spikes about 3,000 gallons per minute, and then it will tumble down when everybody goes to work and then slowly start to creep up as people come home and cook their dinners. And so this is an interesting graph in that in 2014, remember, our spring production was down around 1,500, if not lower, and our water consumption was up around 3,000 gallons per minute. And to keep up with that demand, we actually had to supplement with our 2 wells. So in 2014, we actually pumped 93 million gallons of water, groundwater, using our 2 wells to supplement the spring production. And that was in 2014. And this graph actually shows that demand versus production. So this is our spring production over the year, and you can see that in 2014, for most of the year, our utilization is below the spring production. But in the critical summer months, especially June, it peaks, July and August, our consumption was much higher. Much higher. How much was our consumption? It was about 610 million gallons through the course of the year. And that's so let me make that number a little bit more real. Anybody want to guess how many gallons of water is in Lake Siskiyou? Full capacity, it's actually 8.5 billion gallons of water. So 610 million gallons, that's below 10%. It's about 7% of Lake Siskiyou. So if we put a straw in Lake Siskiyou, we would use about 7% of the lake. We don't. That's not where our water comes from. But that's just to help you put it in perspective on how much water the city of Mount Shasta uses. Well, let me continue with that story. Hopefully that helped. So we were using so much water in 2014. This became a critical issue for City Council. We started talking about what we needed to do about it. And so some of the initiatives that we had is we asked everybody to have do a 20% reduction in their water use. And so everybody probably got a flyer on their door that lives in city limits. And we also we stopped watering a lot of our fields, and soccer fields, baseball fields, etc. If you drove by Sisson Field in 2014, you noticed how dry it was, and it was because the city made a conscious decision to stop. Some of the other initiatives that we had in 2014, well, we were maxing out our infrastructure. Not only were we using everything that the spring was producing, but we were also running our wells nearly 24/7. That was mentioned in the video that we saw at the beginning of tonight's presentation. Rod mentioned that they were running nonstop during the summer months. So we started to look at how we could improve infrastructure, and we looked at DWR grant. DWR is Department of Water Resources. Department of Water Resources manages Proposition 84, a water bond measure that was passed by California residents a number of years ago. But they had a grant that we could apply for, since the city of Mount Shasta is a member of the Interregional Water Management Group here for the Upper Sacramento region. We went after that grant for 2 projects, the 2 projects that Curtis mentioned. And So it was about $4.3 million. And these are big projects for Mount Shasta. Our total general fund, annual general fund in Mount Shasta is about $3 million. So this is a lot of money for Mount Shasta. And the other thing that we started talking about, not only pursuing this grant, but the other thing that we started talking about was we just needed more capacity. So we started talking about installing a $4 million project, which would be construction of a new water tank and well in the Spring Hill area. And this would be a very expensive project for Mount Shasta. So what did we actually do? Well, then 2015 came around and we actually did. We won. We got the grant from DWR and we began construction. And we were under a timeline, as Curtis mentioned, that we had to complete those projects by November of this year. So we're on pace to do that. We just have a small section of the supply line project. And, you know, not to be ignored, but also part of this grant is this program, so co-managed, or really almost exclusively managed by Meadow and Caltrout. All the credit goes to her for a lot of the education series. The video that we saw earlier was all part of that grant. The other thing that we did the spring of this year is we passed resolution CCR-15-27. That was our emergency drought water reduction policy grant. And I will talk a little bit more about what was involved in that. And then city staff also made conscious decisions to more efficiently manage the water use that they had control over. This is one example. We're required to flush our fire hydrants at time to time. That's a lot of water that's released. We would just make sure that when that happened, we would fill up our fire tanks and try to utilize that water as best we could. So I'm not going to spend a lot of time on the next few slides because Curtis did cover a lot of it, but I just wanted to give you a brief status update on some of the projects. Supply line, very near completion, will likely be completed by the end of this year. And then with regards to the water meters, as mentioned before, under budget, ahead of schedule, can't beat that. And so we have installed those 1,800 meters, those 1,800 connections throughout town. At this point, how are we going to begin using those water meters? So right now, the Public Works Department is field testing the technology to read those water meters, to get the water meter readings, collect the data. So that's happening right now. We are also currently accepting requests to opt out of automatic reads. This is not to opt out of receiving a water meter. Everybody has a water meter. What you have the ability to do now is to opt out of having water meters automatically read. We do have the ability to come and manually read your water meters, and that is an option. I do have details of that program, but if anyone in this room is interested, you should know that we do need to cover costs for the additional time to actually do this manual read. So there's an extra $6 a month fee to have your meters read. If you apply for the opt-out program before November 1st, the setup fee, the initial $100 setup fee is waived. After November 1st, there will be a $100 application fee for the opt-out program. I do have more information on that, and you're welcome to ask for it after tonight's presentation. In terms of actually getting the data then on your utility bill, well, the utility bills are being redesigned to include that information. We do intend to provide your usage prior to actually billing you or changing the way that we bill for water. So you'll continue to have your $18 a month water bill, but you hopefully by the end of this year will begin seeing how much water you've been using. each month. We're in the process this winter, this spring, we're undertaking a water study, a water rate study, and we hope to implement new fees based on consumption probably by this time next year in 2016, so that everybody has a chance to see what their winter usage rates are versus their summer rates before we actually implement charging based on consumption. So this is actually my water meter. I've named it George, but the only reason why I included this slide is because it really is. Well, you don't need a computer or anything like that to read your water meter. It really is pretty simple. If you're ever curious about how much water you're using in a given hour or a given day, all you have to do is flip up your lid on any of these water meters. You'll see the antenna, which would transmit, give a brief pulse once a month to send the data to the guy that's driving by in the public works truck. That's the antenna. Here is the water meter itself down on the hole. This is a fuzzy picture, but essentially what it would show you, what is shown here is a digital readout where you can actually get a snapshot of your gallons used thus far. And it will tick away if you open up a faucet or a valve or a shower. It will tick away and you can actually get a reading. So that's water meters. The other 2015 initiative that we had was the resolution, the emergency drought resolution that we passed here in city. And this is very hard to read. This is very small font. Let me quickly summarize for you. The bulk of this resolution was around outdoor sprinkling, outdoor sprinklers, I should say, outdoor irrigation. And why would that be? Why would our focus be on outdoor irrigation? The reason is, well, let me just share this. If you were to turn on a faucet at your home, most residents would get about 10 gallons per minute if they were to let their faucet run. So in terms of outdoor irrigation, if I am to leave my sprinklers on for an hour, that's about 600 gallons that I've just used to water my lawn. And so one of the main initiatives of our drought resolution was to focus on it. And essentially what we said is residents, we can no longer water 7 days a week. We're going to water 3 days a week. And just depending on what your address is, dictates which day you can water on. We also had some other elements of this resolution, which was around how to cut your grass. Obvious that if you have a leak and you know about it, you need to repair it. Only wash cars with a handle that has an automatic shut off. And if you went out to a restaurant here in California, and specifically in Mount Shasta, you would have to ask for water before you were actually served any water. So these are the main initiatives that we had in 2015, and this is where we get to the story. And the story is that we, as residents, all of us, had a dramatic impact on our water usage in 2015. We've had a 45% reduction in water usage from 2014. And this graph shows it right here. Blue is the 2014 water usage, and this is our 2015 water usage thus far. It's been quite dramatic. Is it all related to leaks? It's not all related to leaks. If it was related to leaks, we would see the same amount of reduction in our winter months because they'd be fixed all year round. Does it have an impact? Yeah, absolutely. So the water meters are already having an impact, but it is also those other elements such as outdoor irrigation and watering. So we've gone from about 1.7 million gallons a day in 2014, down to about a million gallons a day for city water usage, which is pretty significant. And then this just shows, this is another interesting tidbit for 2015. Another part of the story is that in this slide, this is our water production, spring production for 2015, and this is our water utilization. And you can see that the gold line never crossed over into the blue, which is quite amazing in that as a result, we haven't had to turn on our wells at all this year. We pumped 93 million gallons of water, groundwater last year. We haven't had to do any of that this year, which is significant. Yeah, and so not only, I mean, regardless of political views, regardless of ideology, you know, the two most significant takeaways for me are not only have we had a lighter impact, a lighter footprint as a city, but the other huge benefit to this is that we've basically saved ourselves a bunch of money. The installation of that $4 million tank and well on Spring Hill is really no longer part of the equation right now. If our utilization does go back up and we start stretching our infrastructure again, that conversation will probably come back. But right now, we've saved ourselves about $4 million, which I think we should all be proud of. Yeah, absolutely. So with that, where are we going from here? Well, in 2016, I think we're all going to get comfortable with our water meters. And so water meters, in my mind, are great because not only can we have that conversation about how much all of us are using together, but now each of us can take responsibility for our own usage too. We can become familiar about how much water we're using and when we're using it. And I think the implementation of the new water rates will also be another big exercise, another big initiative for 2016. With regards to our resolution, the local emergency drought policy resolution, that is still in effect. And so with regards to that, and we will probably continue to follow the state initiative. So if we have another dry year in 2016, winter 2016 and into the summer, I can only imagine that we will hear more from the governor's office, and we will likely follow their lead as to what we should do. So right now, the resolution has not been rescinded. We're still in a drought, and we will see where we need to go with that in 2016. But that is the story. I think it's a great success story. We all deserve a pat on the back, and it's great to be here tonight to just share that with you. So with that, I'll take a few questions, and then I think we have a... Okay, great.
Thank you, Jeff. And since we only have 40 minutes left, I'm going to introduce Elizabeth so that we can go straight into our drought policy conversation and take all these questions that you have. So Elizabeth Betancourt has a BS in environmental biology and an MS in watershed science. She has used that scientific background and her natural tendency toward cooperation and collaboration to build consensus surrounding natural resources management through a variety of venues. For full understanding, California water resources must be seen from a variety of perspectives, and Elizabeth has experienced much of them while working for local, regional, and federal government, nonprofit groups, and in the for-profit consulting industry. Elizabeth currently works as a water resources science and policy analyst for Forrester & Associates, where she helps agencies and organizations to plan for the future, including climate change, regulatory and policy projections, and drought planning, and alternative supply management. Elizabeth also was instrumental in the development of our Upper Sacramento Integrated Regional Water Management Plan, both in the facilitation and writing, and we welcome her here tonight to share her facilitation skills to help us with our community drought policy conversation. So I'll be doing some writing and you are doing the facilitating.
Sounds good. And I know we have some burning questions out there still, but one of the goals, should I?
You just have this one so that it gets recorded. You can maybe do like sort of repeat questions. So
Okay.
That
Oh, sure.
sorry.
Get the nerdy headband also.
Do you think we'll have feedback if you have this to be able to help people?
I'm not sure if that's what was happening earlier, so yeah. So one of the goals of tonight was really to get your input and your opinions based on everything you've heard to date of what you think would be beneficial for the city to think about as we go forward into the future. So Todd presented some really interesting, sorry, I can see things sticking out on the side of my head here. Dave presented some really interesting options that are, being thought about in different communities, and some of them may be applicable, some of them not. You probably have some ideas that you're doing at home right now that you think might be applicable for the whole city, and maybe you have some questions about how the city is doing on water conservation. So I'd like to focus on looking to the future. So if next year is dry, what do you want the city to do? But if you have points of clarification first, we can definitely do that too. So I know you had a burning question.
Mayor Martinez, in the beginning of your presentation, you showed that Mount Shasta residents were using about 1,000 gallons of water a day. Was that pre the savings for 2015? Did it go down about half? Or 45%?
Asking about what the GPCD is now, I guess.
Right. Yeah, I think it was 936 gallons per day per person. I think those figures came from 2012. So it was a couple years back. 2014 was closer to 900 gallons. And so.
Because I know across the state, the average resident uses between 200 and 300 gallons a day.
Actually, 154.
How much?
154.
So we use, what, 7 times more? Is that one of the numbers? So has there been any research in why Mount Shasta uses so much more water than the average consumer elsewhere?
Can you guys hear the question back there? So she's wondering why, if the state average is 154 gallons per capita per day, GPCD, why is Mount Shasta at 900 to 1,000?
Leaks are a possible cause. Outdoor watering obviously had a big impact this year. We are about 3 times higher than Weed and 2.5 times higher than Dunsmuir. So, in general, all of South Siskiyou County is higher than the state average numbers that Elizabeth mentioned. But I think unlimited water use, too.
Well, I've looked here.
Having a flat fee of $18 a month to use as much water as you can get out of your piping in your house is something that we've all had the ability to do.
Well, I lived here since 2006, and I have a water meter because I'm in the county in a private water district.
Yep.
And so I've been reading my meter ever since I moved in.
Yep.
I'll turn on the washer and dryer. I see what it takes, the dishwasher. And so I've been conserving since I got here. And it does make a difference when you can go out and see, oh, I just took a shower and used X amount of gallons, and I'm charged per gallon.
Right.
So it does make a difference to see that. So when you showed that slide of your water meter, I think that'd be a great ad campaign for the city to do in the paper, is learn about your water meter. And then people can challenge themselves, oh, take a shorter shower, wash your dishes by hand instead of the dishwasher. And they know what they're saving.
Yeah, no, I agree.
And there's great software out there where you can I don't think the city has this, but you can compare yourself to your neighbors.
They have that in Sacramento.
Yeah. Yeah,
They
down
have
south.
that in Sacramento, and in some areas it's helpful, in other areas it's very adversarial.
That's true. Very true. We had one back here, and then you're next, and then I'll come to the back. Sir?
As Mr. Todd said, he said 86% of our water is used for agricultural irrigation purposes. And my question is for Mount Shasta, what about our local food growers? I mean, like, I could maybe save like 31 gallons a day, and you can get 31 more almonds out of Southern California. Now, my question is, why the hell are you penalizing me for that, so somebody can have an extra 10 almonds down in San Joaquin?
So how does
You know,
local
how
agriculture
about
concern?
a break on our bills for those of us, like, so many dollars reduction for every 100 square feet of garden you've got?
I think you'll get that when you get your meter installed.
Well, I just want to know if that's going to happen because those meters are there now.
Well, and Mr.
Can we
Todd,
apply for it? Like, can I say, well, I've got 800 square feet of garden, therefore I'm eligible. You can come in and take a look, or here's a picture of my garden and showing 800 square feet, therefore I get an $8 a month reduction.
when you pay volumetrically, you actually get that. But also, Mr. Todd talked about the turf rebate program, so it sounds like you might be interested in getting more information from him
I'm not talking
afterwards.
about a rebate for cutting turf out, because I've already cut out a lot of turf, because my garden uses a heck of a lot less water than grass. You want to see a water grabber, plant grass.
Absolutely.
My God, that uses a lot of water compared to, say, a couple rows of beans.
Right.
But what about the fee reduction?
Do you want to speak to that, Jeff?
Mr. Harkin, is what about a fee reduction for those of us that grow food locally rather than sending the water down to an almond grower in Southern California?
Yeah, it's a great idea, and it's one actually that the council's been wrestling with all summer long, right? Largely because the water reduction policy that we had implemented this year impacts the same issue. So I think what the council would need to do is probably do our homework and see what other communities are doing on that front and how to effectively build a program like that. You know, at first blush, I'm not quite sure how to do it, but
I'll
it's
be
something
glad
we
to
could
speak
research.
on it, because I know how they're doing it in other areas.
Fantastic, great.
All right, we had a question here in the red sweater, and then I'm going to come to the back, and then you right here in gray.
So Jeff, I'm wondering that number of 936 gallons of use per person per day, how much of the city's usage is involved in that number, or any, or is that just residential uses, or does it encompass the entire use throughout the whole city?
It encompasses the entire city. So that would include residential and commercial uses. But if you think about it, it's a pretty small footprint, the city boundary. We don't have a lot of huge commercial outfits that would use a lot of water. It's primarily the residential users that are driving the bulk of the water.
Is that really true? I mean, with so many fields that we're watering and.
Yeah. Another point of clarification is that the park system, not all of the parks utilize our water supply, and so, yeah.
Thanks, Jeff. Right, and gray in the back.
Yeah, I think that I've heard that the city owns the output of Cold Springs, is that right?
That's right.
So how can we be charged for our own water?
How can you be charged for your own water? No, it's a good question. You know, even if the water itself was free, even if there was no charge for the water, there is a fee for the transportation of that water, and so we have to build the infrastructure. We have to build the 35 miles of pipes that run throughout the city to get that water to your doorstep. So that's where the real charge of that water comes from. Or that's where the charge that you receive in the mail, the $18 a month currently, and whatever it will be when we start charging by consumption.
And generally in the water industry, we talk about it as not a charge for water, but a charge for water service. And so, yes, the water is free, it comes from the sky or from the ground, but many communities need to treat it. There's always pipes, not only delivery pipes, but pipes to your house, pumps, that sort of thing.
No, I understand, but that should be a fixed cost for customers, not based on consumption, until we exceed the output of the spring.
Well, I can take a stab at that too. So right now, that's how we are charged for it. Everybody has $18 a month. And some people think that's fair. Other people would say, hey, well, I don't have a lawn. I've taken it all out. I only use 100 gallons of water a day, whereas my neighbor uses 1,000 gallons a day watering his acre of lawn. And so I don't think that's fair.
Swimming pool.
What's that?
Swimming pool.
I don't think that's fair. And so I think that he and my neighbor should pay a larger portion of those infrastructure fees to deliver the water to his house. And so there's a couple ways to think about it. I do appreciate your point, but we think that charging by consumption will have a greater impact, will make people more responsible for their own water use going forward. Yes,
So we have a woman in gray here, and then I'll come back around up here.
I just had a comment. I wanted to support the gentleman's comments about the gardening. I think it's really important that people are not penalized for growing their own food.
So we're kind of talking right now in the drought policy context of prioritizing uses, right? So maybe prioritizing local food, the production of local food over an ornamental lawn, as opposed to a lawn that's used, for children's soccer.
And also as opposed to big agriculture, which is using, or is less conservative about their water use and involves a lot of transportation.
Yes, with the advent of Governor Brown's mandated 25% reduction in water usage, it spurred a lot of local governments to have water reduction programs. And unlike Mount Shasta, you mentioned that Dunsmuir uses about 2.5 times per day, gallons per day per person.
I think it was
and so what I'm getting at is there state oversight and regulation as to what local governments are permitted to do in terms of charging. Specifically, in Dunsmuir, they're contemplating having reduced the allotment, which you don't have, from 10 units in half to 5. And then at a certain, after that 5, you would be charged per unit. Knowing that there's a discrepancy between locales, is there a state regulation that permits them to do that outside of Proposition 218?
Well, permits them to do what? Charge?
To basically lower the ceiling on your allotment and then charge you for anything after that. Because what you're doing, in effect, is having a de facto tax or fee increase.
Okay, there's not a state regulation that does that, or state law, I should say. But rates are set by the local water suppliers, and Prop 218 does come into it. But there are a number of local water suppliers that have successfully held a Prop 218 election and raised water rationing. Is kind of what you're talking about. That was widely done in the drought of the late 80s, early 90s.
And they can do this with impunity, just
what?
They can do this with impunity?
No, what I said was, they have to hold a Prop 218 election. But, people think that Prop 218 prohibits those kinds of rate structures, but it doesn't. As long as you can make a case that it's related to the cost of water service, which was mentioned earlier, it can be done. If the public
A question for Dave. When you had the chart up that was showing the reduction in usages with agriculture, residential, commercial, and industrial, you were talking about how agriculture is being pulled back also as residential. Yet we didn't talk about industrial. And there are 109 water bottling or beverage bottling plants in the state of California. There's going to be one more when Crystal Geyser opens here, as well as the fracking situation down south.
Right.
What is the state of California doing to regulate those businesses that take a huge amount of water and aren't at the 25% reduction mandate, and many of them ship it overseas?
Okay, well, I can't specifically address what the state is doing because that's the purview of the State Water Resources Control Board. But I just saw a report either today or yesterday that the state had ordered, I don't know, 25 or 30, maybe more, fracking wells to cease operation because the water was leaching into the groundwater supply. So the state has the power to regulate that. They are regulating it. I can't, project what they will be doing because, as I say, that's another state department that does that. But they are looking at it, and right now, the State Water Resources Control Board, as I mentioned, is considering what to do next year. And that could be one of the things that they address.
What, the water bottling and beverage
Well,
bottling?
the water bottling and beverage thing is something that currently is regulated by the local water supplier.
But it affects the whole state of California.
Well, and it was also part of the CII, the Commercial Industrial Institutional Task Force in 2010 and 2011. There were some recommendations for that. So the state does not, there are a lot of things that affect all of us that the state doesn't actually regulate, and that's unfortunately one of them.
Yeah.
So. Sir.
Well, I was hinging on to that one is, so I was going to say 31 gallons a day on an average, but yet you've got this Crystal Geyser plant on the north end of town that's going to take 1 million gallons a day. What in the hell does my 31 gallons have to do with their 1 million gallons a day?
That's getting metaphysical.
And what is the big deal? Just being devil's advocate here. Why the hell should I give a damn about 31 gallons when you got a 1 million galloner that's basically polluting the aquifer besides and tearing us up?
I'll take a stab at that, Francis. I think the easiest answer is that that's what we have control over. I think we, right now, in 2015, we empowered the residents to make a difference in their water consumption. With regards to Crystal Geyser, that's another issue in terms of, well, that appears to be going into a secret process, and that will be addressed.
The effluent pipe was only 30 feet outside the city limits of Mount Shasta and flows 30 feet and enters the city.
So
not to mention the fish killed 3 miles of Cold Creek in 2010, and they're going to do the same damn thing with Crystal Geyser. What about these things? Doesn't the city have anything to say about it? Not to mention the aquifer pollution that we've measured, arsenic and lead in our system from down in Coca-Cola.
So yeah. In terms of Crystal Geyser and the secret process, the city really focused in 2014 and 15 on empowering the residents in seeing what we could do to impact our own utilization. In terms of the city's involvement with Crystal Geyser, we have not had a project with Crystal Geyser to this point. We have not had a project with them, a CEQA triggering project with Crystal Geyser at this point. So we have not had the ability to really have any control or to enter that conversation with Crystal Geyser at this point. It does look like they are applying for permits with the Air Quality Control Board, and that they are entering into a CEQA process, which will give us the ability to provide comments into that process going forward. To your point about the effluent, we have not received an application from Crystal Geyser at this point to connect to our wastewater treatment plant. We do expect to receive one. We've been told that they do not want to open their facility until they do have that connection. And so we do see that coming down the pipe. But at this point, what we had control over in 2015 and 2015 was to let the residents and us have an impact on what we use within the city boundary.
Thank you, Jim. So a question back here in black, and then I'll come down the line on the top there.
Stack them. Give them numbers. So I really think that you should be singing the praise of our water master workers, that they have repaired a lot of leaks.
Absolutely.
And that the graph you were showing and said, well, over the winter we would have seen the difference. The leaks hadn't been repaired then.
That's
So
true.
that was really misleading. We won't know until the next, we come back around,
Yep.
how much difference it will be. And we still have leaks, they're still finding leaks. So in the future, we need to keep investing our money into repairing these pipes, because before you showed up, it was not being done. And that leaks had been going on, and they would just go, oh, there's springs.
No, you're absolutely right. We were calling them springs when we found some of those leaks.
Right, yeah.
What's that Little Lake Street?
Yeah, and that spring has now been fixed.
Right.
Yay. So, you really should chant, it's not just the residents.
This is just the
doing it.
beginning. This is just the
Yes.
beginning of our efforts to conserve water in Mount Shasta. The meters are going to be a huge tool to
Why
that
are you
effort.
fixing those leaks? Are you
Because
gonna be a
the leaks that we have found,
Yeah.
so far are on the residential side of the meter. Oh, we've installed this meter, it won't turn off. It just keeps going. There must be a leak at the house, right?
There's that too.
So what we haven't really even had an opportunity to research is all those leaks on the city side of the meter, right? So now we have the tools to do so. We know that this cul-de-sac, all the residents in this are using this amount of water, but we know that the supply going into that cul-de-sac is this. So why is there a difference and where is that leak? There's a lot that still can be done.
So can you really do that with different parts of town? I mean, we know how much is coming out of the spring, but we don't have anything metered in different parts of town, do we?
Well, Curtis is probably in a better position than I am to answer that. But we do have a meter at the very top that Curtis showed us going into the city, and there are means to help us find leaks in various sections. I'm not making that up, am I?
No, you're absolutely right. So yeah, we know what water's coming into the system from that meter.
Yeah.
But we also know what's going, there's pressure reducing stations throughout the town, so we know when they open, when they close. So we know how much water's going to the different parts of town through those pressure